You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. Of course, the homeless are being removed from these encampments, and it's going to be permanently. They've been cleared by the District of Columbia. Now, residents of this newly gentrified area here in D.C. say the encampments have become a safety issue for pedestrians traveling through the area. Now, D.C. is not the only place where this is an issue, where police they're moving homeless people out of places, replacing them with high-priced condos. So here's how do we, so our panel, and again, this is not, sort of like, okay, in public policy here, but look, there's a homeless problem in this country.
I'm sorry.
What do you do with them? What do you do with this? Do you set up a particular area that's away from downtown areas, that's away from homes? If you're a homeowner or an apartment, are we right to criticize people who say that this is a blight or they don't want to walk through homeless encampments? Please weigh in.
What you do is you have a policy for affordable housing that is recognizing the wages that most people in the middle class and lower middle class work at in this country. Everybody knows what those statistics are. We should not have a homelessness problem in the richest country on the planet. And Muriel Bowser.
But that's not solely about when it comes to wages. I think part of the issue also that we have to contend with is that also a significant part of our homeless problem deals with folks with mental illness.
Oh, absolutely, Roland. But we have no policy for that either. We have no policy for poor people in the United States, and we have no policy for mental health, really, formally in the United States. I mean, effectively what these cities are doing is they're making it illegal to be poor. Muriel Bowser does not have a policy for homelessness. There was a homelessness shelter on 14th Street. She closed it and has no policy, has no answer for that. I don't know whether you're around, Roland, on Thanksgiving or Christmas in Washington, D.C. Me and an ex-boyfriend of mine had a little
Christmas, I was in Ghana, and Thanksgiving, I wasn't here, so go ahead.
Yes, sir. So I'm just saying that if you're around, I'm sure this happens in other cities as well, but on the times when I happen to be here in town, at Farragut Square, all the homeless are there in the square, and there are people who formally come around and with like food trucks and homeless advocates and feed them. And me and an ex-boyfriend and I used to participate in this, and it's pretty humbling to say the least. And what it makes you realize is that these cities do not have a policy for poor people. We live in a survival of the fittest country. I know this is not a shock, this information is not a shock to anybody, but we don't have a policy for this, and we don't want to have a policy for this because our lawmakers are concentrated on moneyed interest much of the time. The reason that Bernie Sanders is leading in Iowa in the polls right now, the reason he just raised $34 million and $18 in average donation is that he's brought up income inequality, an issue that no one talks about because most of our politicians are focused on moneyed interest and people who don't have these problems. So there's no pressure on anybody to even talk about it. And so Washington, D.C., of course, is not an exception to anything. But what I've seen over the years here in Washington, D.C., and I'm from New York. New York has an even worse homelessness problem, of course. What I see is that there's no policy. Nobody even talks about it, much less does anything about it. And then they get into, conservatives love to talk about, well, the charities can take care. Of course, charity can't take care of all these homeless people. So the idea that they are now, we're gonna clean it up because, there's a safety issue. It's not a safety issue. It's not a safety issue. There is no policy. The lawmakers are embarrassed that when people ride into the city, they see homeless people, and they don't have an answer for it. So the Mayor Bowser should admit that she has no answer for homelessness in Washington, D.C. That's what she should do.
And I would say the people who are facing the most danger are the people who live under that bridge. It's cold, they're more likely to be attacked and other kinds of things. And the main reason why people are homeless is because they can't afford housing. Yes, mental illness is an issue. Yes, addiction and other things are an issue. But the main thing is that people are actually unable to afford a home. And even in that neighborhood where you're talking around a K Street, you're talking about rents in there upwards of $3,000 a month.
Right.
Who can afford that? I mean, working people can't afford that. I mean, and some of these very same people under this bridge are working residents of the District of Columbia. And she needs to also ask, I think Mayor Bowser needs to ask this, why don't people feel safe enough in some cases to go to shelters? That in fact it's preferable to be on the street than in the shelter, because in some cases people are being assaulted in shelters, they're having their items stolen, right? There are lots of ways in which people are abused, even in the places where they're supposed to be safe. And so I think trying to kind of go after these people and sort of bully the people with the least, right, in this city is sort of easier solution. It makes the people who live around there probably feel better because they don't have to be bothered with seeing these remnants of the poverty that they leave in their wake, but it doesn't actually do anything. And when we think about DC and its homelessness situation, it has actually gotten sort of less accommodating, right? I mean, people used to be able to go in the old post office pavilion and sort of wash up and be able to face the day. And yet they've criminalized more of this. I mean, there's no place in the city that you can just go to the bathroom, right? If you're in the city, you got to get a code to use the door, right, to get to the bathroom. So all of these ways in which people's dignity is sort of chipped away at is exacerbated by policies of sort of just taking and bulldozing and trashing everything that people have. And all they're going to do is move to a different place where they can try to feel safe and try to build some community, because the truth is people are not going to the shelters that exist because there are plenty of open beds in those shelters, and it's also not capturing those people who are couch surfing and other things right now. So Muriel Bowser is putting a Band-Aid on an issue that is much deeper and much bigger than just bulldozing everything that's on K Street.
But also, Mustafa, let's just be honest. The taxpayers, folks don't want to pay for this. Right. And what you're dealing with is we have a me, myself, and I situation in cities across this country. And again, when you look at what are the problems, when you look at mental illness, when you look at what's happening with homelessness, people kind of like, hey, guess what? It's sort of like how we do inmates. Whatever. Okay, whatever.
I got mine. You should be able to get yours. You know, we're now in a situation where before folks used to look out for each other. My grandparents, I remember them sharing with me if somebody ran into a hard time, didn't matter if they were a relative or not, folks would have a safe space where you could come and stay at the house if you needed something to eat, taking care of that. We no longer have that communal type of a situation or a society that's in place. When it comes to the homeless, people want them to be unseen and unheard. They know that in some instances they don't vote, and if you don't vote, then lots of times you don't get the attention, you don't get the resources. We live in one of the wealthiest cities in the world, and we still have 6,500 people on a daily basis who are homeless. That makes no sense whatsoever. And as the other panelists said, we've got to make sure that the policies are there, but then we also have to have our own personal responsibility to see people as human and to make sure that we're doing whatever we can to help them, to uplift them.
And Roland, I don't know if it's that people don't want to pay for it. I think it's leadership doesn't even bring it up. Leadership doesn't even bring up and say, this is what I would like to allocate tax money for. We actually don't know whether or not people would want to pay or not. What I know is when I see City Center get built and I see a Saks Fifth Avenue, what these mayors are interested in is the same thing with Adrian Fenty. It was the same thing with Anthony Williams. They just do the same thing. They want that tax base. They want somebody paying taxes for some condo, property taxes, so the city can make money. They want to do parking tickets. They've got all the ingenuity in the world when it comes to collecting a parking ticket. But all of a sudden, the ideas have run out when it comes to homelessness and affordable housing. So anything that makes the city revenue, they're all in. So I'm not a believer in. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, finish your point.
No, I'm just going to say I'm not a believer in, we just don't know what to do and, we can't figure it out. These other countries figure it out. Other countries with less money figure out how to house their people. Russia, we give Putin a hard time all the time. I know it's a socialistic system. It's different. But these countries that we criticize, that we give a hard time to, one of the things they figure out how to do is to put a roof over the heads of all of their citizens. So that's on us. City Center alone should tell you that there's a massive problem with regard to political leadership and poor people in this country. And when you're sitting here with 43 million people in poverty, 1 out of every 7 Americans, and nobody even talks about it. We go through presidential debate after presidential debate without poverty even coming up once. So right there, that tells you the system's broken.
But here's the deal. But here's the deal. This is a tweet that Reverend William Barber sent out about 30 minutes ago. The Poor People's Campaign demands a full, nationally televised, primetime presidential debate on poverty to save lives and the heart and soul of this nation. Will the 7th DEM debate hear the voices of poor people to ensure we revive public discourse on poverty? Hashtag Moral March on Debate. Now, this is what I tweeted, and I'm sure they aren't happy about this here, but I really don't care. My response to this was, and I tagged them, I said, hey, TV One, Clio TV, which is their second network, OWN TV, Bounce TV, BET Her, Revolt TV, Aspire. We've got enough award shows, reality, and crime shows. How about y'all come together to jointly finance and simulcast this debate Reverend Barber's asking for? Retweet if you agree. Now, that's me talking to those black targeted broadcast and cable networks. But, Mustafa, when it comes to these cable news networks and these broadcast networks, they aren't asking any of these questions. And I think Reverend Barber is right. There should be a specific debate dealing with the issue of poverty in this country. And you know what? Too many of these people are not going to do it.
Reverend Barber's right. You're right. We have to focus on these issues. And it just goes down, we push back against all these other folks who we see impacting our communities. But then we let a lot of our own people off when it comes to the decisions that they're making and the lack of investment that they're making inside of what I call, so I often talk about vulnerable communities. When you talk about the homeless community, you're going a whole nother level of different types of things that folks are dealing with and the resources that are needed. And we have a responsibility. So, I'm glad you and Reverend Barber sent that out and are trying to hold people accountable, because if we don't continue to put a spotlight on what's happening, then we're going to continue to see this cycle happen again and again and again.
And we have presidential candidates that sit up here and spend $300 million on Facebook ads. It's just completely crazy that not only has there not been a debate that is focused on an issue that 42 million Americans deal with, but that we have these weird situations where people can throw away money to run a political campaign and don't even think to themselves, wait a minute, I could be using this money to actually save people's lives.
But it does make sense, right? Because we are in a Protestant work ethic country, right? Where if you work hard and you do the right things, then you'll be able to amass wealth, right? You'll be able to be domiciled. We actually don't really have a language for talking about people who face these kinds of insecurities, which is far more regular in this country than we all appreciate. Right. And because these same 40 million people don't vote, and most of the people who are home insecure or food insecure are children, right? We really don't talk about them when it's kind of election time, because these people don't vote. They don't have an address. They don't exist, right, for us in many ways. They are non-citizens, and we treat them that way on purpose. So I actually think what we do to homeless people is purposeful, because we stigmatize homeless people. We don't talk about them because we actually don't feel sorry for them, right? We actually don't feel empathy for them. We don't feel anything for them, because in our kind of, I think, American ethos, they shouldn't even exist. If everybody just did what they were supposed to do, they wouldn't be homeless. And I think that's a very fossil way of thinking about it, but I think that's the way we've thought about it, and I think that's traditionally the way we've treated people without a domicile, because even to say get into a shelter in some cases, you have to prove that you're a resident of the place. How? If you don't have any papers or you have no way to really identify yourself, how? So to even get the assistance you need, you still have to prove that you are a resident, even though I'm standing right here in front of you saying I have nowhere to go. And then trust me, nobody goes to a shelter or to some other temporary housing if they don't need to. It is not somewhere that people want to be. Well, so I think this is insane.
Look, for instance, look, you just had the story of the guy, the wide receiver, a 4-star recruit, who killed
Right. Yes,
himself,
right.
Indeed.
committed suicide.
Absolutely.
His family been battling homelessness.
Absolutely.
I mean, this is a guy who was going to Georgia Tech. Again, 4-star wide receiver. Depending upon what could have happened, you know, could have gone on to play in the NFL. But again, the strain and the pressure that family endured, being homeless is real. I just saw a story the other day, NFL player who running back for the Oakland Raiders, bought his dad a home. They, as a family, at one point, you know, were homeless, living out of a car.
Right.
Yeah.
Tyler Perry has talked about being homeless and, you know, living out of his car as well. I mean, I think a lot of people overlook those things all across this country. You want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. See that name right there? Roland Martin Unfiltered. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so when we go live, you'll know it.